Well, I think I'm lucky in the sense that I have parents that care about me, and because of that, when I would go out and do, things like drugs and stuff like that, I'd feel a tremendous amount of guilt.
Do you want to know why I use a knife? Guns are too quick. You can't savor all the little emotions.
I walked into my parents' room, the lights were off, they were asleep, and I said, guys, I have something to tell you. And they're like, whoa, what is it? And I was like, I took acid tonight. My mom was like, oh, I can't deal with this. This, I'm going to bed. And she ran downstairs and went and slept on the couch.
That being said, doesn't everyone want their parents dead?
I didn't.
I didn't either. In this analysis, we'll delve deeper into the dark, disturbing criminal psychology of the Reiner's killer, and also deal with the number 10 clue everyone missed, which is specific to knife crimes.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head,
One of the main differences between a knife crime and a firearm is the speed, not only in which fatal wounds can be inflicted, but how long it takes for those wounds to take effect.
Guns are too quick.
Based on this headline from People, which cites the death certificates, the Reiners took minutes to die. That is a pretty excruciating death, and maybe that is what someone wanted. They wanted it to be excruciating.
You can't savor all the little emotions.
Or indeed the big ones. Firearm crimes overall can begin and end in an instant. Knife crimes take much, much longer, especially when there's more than one victim, as we see in this case. Another aspect to a knife crime is that it tends to involve very close quarters. The knife literally has to penetrate flesh while the perpetrator is wielding it, while he is holding it. That is very close quarters. When the knife goes into the victim has at least one hand or arm to fend off or injure their attacker. In the movie The Professional, an assassin tells his protege,
"The rifle is the first weapon you learn how to use, because it lets you keep your distance from the client.
And then he says,
The closer you get to being a pro, the closer you can get to the client. The knife, for example, is the last thing you learn."
Now, ironically enough, the movie The Professional is about a little girl who wants revenge on someone who killed her parents. Now, whoever killed Rob and Michelle Reiner was no assassin, and as a result, he likely suffered the same fate as others implicated in knife attacks, especially those involving multiple victims. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, thank you very much for those who have contributed super thanks over the last period. Really do appreciate that. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. Also, let me know if you'd like me to cover the Crans Montana tragedy in Switzerland. And let's get started. So, intertextually, Brian Koberger appeared to have a cut or an injury on the knuckle of one of his fingers in a selfie he took shortly after that incident. O.J. Simpson, once a suspect in a double homicide as well, I've written 3 books on that particular case, he had a very nasty cut on his middle finger, which he claimed he cut on a whiskey glass on the night of the incident. Remember that. O.J. also appeared to have a cut on the side of his finger. Jodi Arias also had cuts on her hands after murdering her boyfriend Travis Alexander with a knife. I actually wrote 6 books, a quadrilogy. No, that's 4. Sorry, 6 books is a hexology, a series of 6 works.
That's one of the cuts you sustained to your hand?
Yeah, the fold of the skin is back over the injury.
And can you tell from this exhibit, is this your right or left hand?
That would be my right hand.
Which would make sense if Jodi was right-handed. That would be the hand that was wielding the knife. At least 2 witnesses, Ryan Burns and Leslie Udy, said that they saw small bandages on Jodi's hands in the days after the murder. Jody, like OJ, claims she got those cuts after breaking a glass. She also seemed to cut a tendon in, I think it's the second finger, the ring finger of her left hand. In the Chris Watts case, which didn't involve firearms or knives, but did involve a crime at very close quarters, in the sense that manual asphyxia, in that sense, it is like a knife crime. Well, the odds of being injured are even higher in a case like that. And is that how and why Chris Watts suffered that red welt on his neck, possibly inflicted by a fingernail? Watts claimed that the red mark on his neck was a bug bite, but it appears to be a reverse R if you look carefully. Some have speculated that his mistress gave him a hickey, but that's not what a hickey looks like. A hickey tends to appear to be a roundish bruise. Now, it's important to bear in mind not just these injuries and the type of crime we're dealing with, but also the excuses, the reasons these various suspects gave for these various injuries. In Chris Watts' case, he said that it was a bug bite. That doesn't look anything like a bug bite. Now, I know some of you won't like me bringing this up at all, but I'm going to bring it up anyway, because Meredith Kircher was also stabbed to death. That's also a knife crime. So what do we learn from that particular case? And I've written many books on that case as well. Traces of Amanda Knox's DNA was found mixed with Meredith's blood in the bathroom outside Meredith's bedroom. So that is something we'd also want to be looking for in this particular case. But that is not necessarily, you would think it is, but that is not necessarily smoking gun evidence. Have a look at this. In the Meredith Kircher murder case, traces of Amanda Knox's DNA were found mixed with Kircher's blood in the bathroom of their shared apartment. And that led to a significant legal debate, with prosecutors saying that places Knox at the scene, while the defense argued it was due to normal roommate contact and potential contamination. Now, bear in mind that Nick lived in that area as well, and you've just heard him say earlier in this video that he'd been into his parents' bedroom. So finding his DNA in their bedroom wouldn't necessarily mean anything. Something else that's quite interesting is Knox said that her blood was actually found in the bathroom as well, and she said that could have been from her piercing her ears. And if you think about it, when last did you have an injury that led to you bleeding? And when last did you have an injury where you were bleeding and someone else died at the same time? Because that's what we're dealing with O.J. Simpson, and I believe with Jodi Arias as well. Now, if you have an open mind and you trying to gather information, Amanda Knox sustained this injury close to that time as well. The police felt it was relevant enough to photograph. When Knox was asked in court if it was a scratch from Meredith, in other words, a defensive wound, Knox described it as a hickey. The same explanation some people think about in the Chris Watts case. Now, have you ever given or received a hickey on your Adam's apple? Interestingly, someone close to Knox also noticed this injury, but unfortunately didn't report it to the police at the time because she said she thought everyone had noticed it. Now, we're going to come back to Nick Reiner in a moment, but I just want to quote this from Laura Mazzetti, Knox's roommate. I didn't talk about it, that's that injury, before because I thought that this scratch was obvious to everyone as I noticed it. I noticed it immediately that day, I repeat, precisely because Meredith had been killed with a cut to the throat. So I noticed the scratch on Amanda and I didn't report it because I was convinced that everyone had noticed. And you notice the word that she uses, scratch. And I think that is what it is. Now, if some of you don't believe Knox's injury is relevant because you think she's innocent, that is really my point. And that's the number 10 clue we all missed. I think there's a very good chance Nick Reiner, if he committed this crime, had injuries as well. This is speculation, of course. But if he doesn't have injuries, or if the injuries can be explained by some sort of innocent thing, like perhaps he has a bruise and you could say, well, he bumped himself while he's playing basketball, then that is going to limit the way that one can connect him to this crime. So is Nick Reiner injured? Well, in the CCTV footage we have of Nick, does it appear that he is injured in any way? It doesn't, does it? Now, all of that is based on a cursory glance at sort of real-time speed. It really doesn't look as if he has any injuries on either of his hands or on his neck or face, and he doesn't seem to be limping either. So what we want to do is really slow the footage down, zoom in, and take a closer look. Now, when we do slow down the footage, does it seem like he's nursing his left hand the way he has it tucked behind the one strap of his red backpack? And why a red backpack? But the next moment, here at 36 seconds, when he pays, well, he seems to be pretty good, pretty deft at fishing a card or cash out of his wallet, doesn't he? It's also interesting how he seems to give what appears to be an armed security guard walking by him in the store a second glance, and maybe even a third. But here's the question: does he have any injuries, either to his hands or fingers, or perhaps bruises or cuts to other parts of his body? If Michelle was attacked first, you can imagine Rob would have rushed to her defense and possibly landed a punch or two before he was stabbed. If Nick sustained bruises, as I say, he might say he got it playing basketball, but cuts would be a lot more difficult to explain, but there don't seem to be any. In footage taken apparently before the murders, a claim that I frankly find a little bit hard to believe, but perhaps they know something I don't. Perhaps they have cell phone geotagging data that shows Nick's movements. But anyway, in that footage we can see he's dressed from head to toe in dark clothing. What happened to those clothes? Because that's another aspect. Are there cuts on the clothing? Are there fingernail or touch DNA on clothing? If Nick doesn't have any injuries, either to himself or to his clothing, that would be strange indeed, and that could be his best defense, because it's very improbable that someone with a knife could attack two people at the same time and not injure themselves. Now, we don't know if both his parents were in bed asleep or if one had gone to the bathroom, but in this sort of attack, one might be able to catch one of the victims by surprise, the other, no chance. And if the other is energized by seeing what is going on, they would be acting on adrenaline, and there will be a melee of arms and chaos and very rapid movement. So if Nick doesn't have any injuries, this could be the strongest aspect for his defense. We do know that blood was found in his hotel room. Was any of it his blood? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Again, let me know in the comments if you guys want me to cover the Crans Montana Inferno. All right, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.